We are here for learning from Lars, and I have the absolute pleasure to start the meetup about the insights from your journey at Mercedes-Benz USA. I'm just going to say 2 words about me. So my name is Riina. I'm the founder of Agile HR Community, also a trainer and Agile enterprise coach, working with everything, from beginner teams to large-scale global transformations. And I've been working with Lars a couple of years. It's a few years since we met. So I want to give you the word to just introduce yourself and also the organization that you work with, so we get the context of what we are going to hear. Yeah?
Absolutely,
Welcome.
Riina.
Warmly welcome.
Thank you very much, and hopefully you can hear me okay. Okay, fantastic. So Riina, as you alluded to, you and I met several years ago. I was a student, and I think I'm very much still a student of Agile, learning some of the intricacies, but also the artistic side of what it can be and its overall capabilities for our organization. I'm the Chief HR Officer for Mercedes-Benz North America. I have the pleasure of being with the organization now for 9 years, as of this past March 30th to be precise. And really for us, we're trying to find unique ways not only to work, but to keep our staff in HR engaged, but also the broader community. And I'll talk more about that later on. We are in unprecedented times like many other industries. And we certainly pride ourselves on being on the front foot as far as new ways of working and changing the overall model. And again, I will go into much more of that in short duration.
Happy to have you join us, and I'm really curious to start learning about what you've done. We have prepared a few themes that we're going to talk about, but we haven't really talked in depth about it, so it's going to be a new story for me as well. Quite often when we are talking about agility, there's a big question about the why. So why on earth should HR teams start looking into this? What was your why? Well, why did you you started as a CHRO yourself? That's very rare, by the way, that the CHRO starts, but would be lovely to hear your story.
Well, I'll tell you just personally, and then I'll certainly get into why it was important for us. Number one, I really felt if I am to lead an organization in an agile way, I needed to first be under the tutelage of the experts, and that's when I sought you and the organization out to really understand some of the basics, but also how I can help to transform the organization by being a model or an example. I felt specifically that HR is to some degree, maybe less so now, but is to some degree far too traditional. I think we still rely on a lot of proven concepts, certainly, but also concepts that may need to be dusted off and refurbished, if you will. I also felt in my organization, we needed to have a bit more rigor around prioritization. We are not being given more headcount. But of course, we're being asked to do more with less. And this is one of the finer ways, in my opinion, to do just that. So we don't create a backlash amongst the HR employees. And then, as I said earlier, I wanted a different set of working styles. This is certainly one of them. I think there are others by all means, but this is one of them. And the team is really rallied around being able to conceptualize what different working styles can be. Oddly enough, when we introduced it to the broader organization, the business organization, by way of a certification last year, we found that there was quite a bit of appetite around working in a different way. I just think the idea of prioritization, helping people to work closely with the stakeholders to derive new concepts and new iterations, I think is just fascinating. And that's really brought about our why.
This is often what I hear as well from HR teams who want to start looking into this. They are saying they need to move away from the silos. They need to be really customer centric. They are looking at a product mindset in HR, how to start generating products that people, managers, the organization actually want to use and find valuable, and maybe also cut away. There's just too much noise. There's too much stuff on HR's plate. So clearly understanding what is the valuable thing that we're going to do. What's the real important stuff, and maybe leave the rest not done, to be honest. If you're a real agilist, by the way, you're as interested in what should we not do than what are we focusing on. Excellent.
Yeah.
So you work Mercedes-Benz car industry. It's going through a massive disruption currently. There's the kind of digital cars and the battery industry, all
EV,
of the technology going into cars. Can you share a little bit about that changing context? Because it's also important to remember we in HR are part of that business context. So can you share a bit of your thoughts and what's cooking in the industry?
Well, as you said, and I think it's widely known that the automotive industry is going through one of the greatest transformations ever. And just think of what we value as human beings. We value our homes, and second, behind our families, obviously, family and friends. But in terms of physical assets, our homes and then our automobiles, particularly here in the US. And I just think, given the speed, the agility that's expected, and the digital nature, the car, by all means, has never really changed. I mean, four wheels, transmission. We are moving away from a different battery setup or combustion engine now to an electric battery. But we're also seeing that the vehicle is a lot more digital and has a lot more software than ever before. And so the expectations are very high as far as customers are concerned. And like anything else, what an individual is exposed to, in our case, our employees, with highly demanding customers, equals what their demand is on the inside or internally. And so we've had to adjust quite a bit. I'll tell you, as I said it before, this constant prioritization, but also asking ourselves, if something didn't work, what's a good alternative? What's a quick turn? How can we keep the same pace, but also keep iterating around what's important? And frankly speaking, we think that's here to stay. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Oh, for sure. So I've been working a bit as well. I kind of echo what you're saying with working with hardware companies. I worked somewhat with hardware R&D and seeing how they are needing and struggling to move towards a more incremental, speedy, quarterly prioritization, even in the hardware development, because you don't nowadays have hardware usually without those signaling sensors and analytics and services built on that hardware. So you need to start having those interfaces on how to really develop products and services with hardware and software connected. And this is totally transforming a lot of businesses, all the way from heavy industry companies that are generating. I just recently worked with a company that are generating like machines worth 10 million machine, right? They are looking at how to digitalize services and products on top of that. So it's nothing new. It's happening now with us with a rapid speed. And that is why one reason why I think HR should start waking up for understanding the organization is changing their ways of working. Why don't we be prepared for that and start changing ourselves as well?
That's exactly it. Yeah. No, it reminds me of the famous story of the brick masons. One was asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm breaking rocks." The other one was asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm making a living." And the other one said, "I'm building a cathedral." And
Exactly.
and frankly, that's exactly what we're doing here. Yes, it's about HR and it's about the service we provide, but we're part of this overall glorious transformation in the automotive industry.
Thank you for sharing that. When we start talking about agility, there is one thing where we always start. So in any agile team, one of the big questions is, what should we do? What's the core thing that we are delivering? And we talked about that was one of the key kind of whys for you as well. Would you talk about the focus on prioritization, how that changes from what you did before?
Yeah, I'll spare you an example for right now. I think we can talk about that later. But maybe one of the core fundamental things I introduced, and this is by way of Agile HR, was this concept called Moscow, which is must, should, could, or won't do. What must we do? What must we absolutely do? And having this level of clarity is so good for the team, because I think the team now can rally around a singular message, and sometimes it's one or two. But then we can stack rank what should come next. So thus Moscow was introduced very early on. Acronyms are very easy in the Western in the Western culture, particularly in our culture. And so the team really resonated, or this concept resonated with them. It forced us to get very linear, and instead of having discussions that tend to go everywhere, but really go nowhere in the end. And really getting down to the singular focus has been very important. And I've instituted this now across a number of veins, not just in Agile, but just in general. I love breaking things down to the core objectives. I think it goes with the saying that you can't major in minors. So what are the major things that we must get focused on? This is also a skill that I think is quite easy to find within HR. We can work with a lot of details, but get down to the core set of objectives versus getting lost. And that was certainly very helpful for the team. As I said before, so many things to do. You can do everything, but make very little impact. So we're constantly trying to scratch and claw away to getting to what drives the biggest impact. Because at the end of the day, it's about value, and it's about value at scale. And then it also helps us to manage capacity and workload. I can determine based on the team's objectives who's adding the most value, because we know we get a quick return or a quick response on that value, but I'm also able to measure their overall capacity and load. And the team likes that. I think they appreciate the leadership or having a leadership as well as a team environment where we're talking about capacity, load, well-being, and Agile is certainly perfect for that type of sponsorship.
That is a very important one, the capacity. I usually have said that HR people, it's the first time they start talking about capacity. They've been so good at saying yes to everything because they want to do a good job. They want to be serving the organization, which leads to kind of blocking the pipeline of too much work. In addition to that, we in HR tend to be quite domain experts in something that we absolutely love, which leads to us picking up these pet projects, things that you really want to do to improve and to tweak something here and to, make something perfect on this little part here, and spending quite a lot of time on that compared to what we should actually be doing. So when we sometimes bring in this skill set of having conversations and making it visible, it's quite a shocker for many HR people to say, wow, 40% of our weekly time just goes blocked for meetings that we have every week. Then this time goes for random meetings that are in projects. Then I have these things. Then I got my absences and holidays. And then I got my pet projects that I'm working on. And what is actually remaining time for doing that value-adding strategic project? Very little. What are your thoughts around when I'm sharing this?
Well, listen, I 100% agree. I mean, I think and let me first share that we're still not very good at this. I would not claim to be an expert. I think it's kind of a daily learning and daily journey. At the same time, though, I think what we're getting better at is the constant asking of the question. And I now find my team asking me when I bring a pet project to them, because I'm certainly guilty of what you expressed. Is this really going to add the most value? And that to me is when you see the wins, when the team starts asking those important questions. I think I may have shared with you in one of our meetup calls that we've now found that Agile is so easily adopted by any generation within our workforce. So we have a group of college students. They work in a purely Agile environment. The grasp that they have is so fast. But that's regardless of how young you are in the organization or how seasoned you might be. I find that people resonate with this because I think it is at its basic level exactly what we believe an organization ought to be. Yes, we dress it up with fancy terminology like Agile and various methodologies and incrementals and incremental and scaling, etc. But at its basic form, I think this is what people appreciate and what they expect a work environment to be about.
That's so true. When we start working in an agile way, it's very inclusive.
Yes.
If you look, you talked about cross-generational. I would even dare to say that it's not an, as you say, it's not an age thing. It's not a what your background is or what your profession is or what your education is. It just makes sense for many people to work that way. It's very collaborative and transparent as well. What would you say about the inclusion part in agility? Because if we work in a, if we say agile ways of working create an inclusive environment, would you agree with that, and why?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with it. And I would say if you were to take any project, and let me pick on one of them, we actually we embarked on revamping our entire onboarding process, and we wanted Agile to be center stage with that revamp. And everyone that worked together, and when I say everyone, I'm talking the entire stakeholder community. So you had a group of end users, so recent hires, number one, IT, HR. We also had payroll was also involved, and then we had security involved. We brought everyone to the table. There was no hierarchy. The level of collaboration was immense because everyone had a specific task or set of objectives that needed to be met. But we set the ground rules very early on, and we said this is about ensuring that we have a good product that we continue to enhance for the sake of our employees. We will measure it by all means, but it's for the sake of our employees. And I think with that in mind, that equal the playing ground for everyone. And we've seen a single point increase in our overall satisfaction scores from Q1 of 2023 to Q4 of 2023. We'll run another survey here at the end of now that it's the end of Q1. So I'm hopeful that we clean up a few areas. But that was a complete that was a perfect example of what complete inclusion looks like. And again, the appetite was so high. I think everyone resonated with it. We're embarking on a similar project very soon. We're testing an internal GPT or generative AI tool within HR, and we're finding the same thing. State the common purpose, express that common purpose extensively, particularly in every interaction. Bring in your stakeholders so they have a chance to test and to visualize your prototypes. And then you see the team just rally around it. And to me, that's a hallmark of great inclusion.
Excellent. When I look at the inclusion, I love what you're saying about bringing in kind of cross-functional inclusion, not just in HR, so through HR silos like talent, working with L&D, working with performance, working with reward, but we're looking at a true end-to-end experience for our employees, such as onboarding. All of these elements or functions that you mentioned are participating in delivering that experience to a newcomer. So to have them really swarm around how to do that in a great way. And you also mentioned that stepwise process of, I heard it kind of between the lines, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're starting somewhere, but you realize that you can do that incrementally, improve that onboarding experience incrementally with the team. It's not going to be a one-go release and everything is done and perfect, but you're doing that in a more cyclic manner. Is that true?
That's exactly it, Riina. In fact, it's not my genius type at all, but I think the genius of this entire discussion, but the Agile journey, is it really has forced us to look at things incrementally. Every time we don't exactly get it right, that's Agile working, or in my opinion, that's Agile at its best. Where now we have a chance to go back and say, okay, what is missing? What else do we need to provide? I will say it's a significant change, and this is one of the cautions really to your audience, that you will have, as the saying goes, you will have the body rejecting the organ. Even internal to HR, have individuals that when it doesn't work the first time, the natural reaction is, well, it didn't work, and therefore we have to go back to the drawing board. No, we just pick up where we left off. That's exactly what I want. I want incremental improvements on our CSAT scores and onboarding, because it gives us additional opportunities to improve. And then we should look for areas where we did not, quote unquote, get it right, and add that to our additional releases. I just love it. I love this idea of breaking everything down and having slow, steady progress, and being able to look back and say, I remember when it was a quote disaster, and look at where we've come. I think this demonstrates to people that you can make progress even in the most dismal of times. We have a very similar situation going on with payroll, and we have some improvements to make, but we will do very much the same thing. It'll be incremental. We'll involve our stakeholders. We'll ask their opinions, and we'll eventually get people on board slowly but steadily.
What a beautiful explanation on that one. There's one skill that I think HR people need a bit of mindset stretching and massaging, and that is the perfectionist. There is a perfectionist living in us, and I would like to say here for people that there are areas where we need to be perfectionists. When there is a law, when there's health, safety, that's where we need to be perfectionist. But if onboarding is 80% good, taking care of 80% of the needs, and that remaining 20% would need quite a lot of effort to get right, should we use that effort for some other project, for something else, than finalizing, fine-tuning, perfecting something which is good already? So this teaches you to do that effort value, the weighing of, should we put the effort to finalize this to perfection, or should we move that capacity somewhere else? What are your thoughts on that one?
I would agree, and I would also give you an alternate perspective. So I 100% agree. I think 80% is often good. In fact, if anyone's ever done any work around OKRs, you know that if you hit 85%, you're usually in the green. So it's evidence that 80+% is generally good. The alternate perspective I would give, I like the team to continue pushing past the 80%, because you've gotten the majority out of the way. You've in a sense perfected or mastered 80% of it. Could we get incrementally better 1% at a time? And who knows, maybe 1%, 2%, an additional 3 to 4 percentage points is all we can, is really perfection at the end of the day, or it achieves satisfaction from our employees at the end of the day. But I like the team to constantly think about it. It's the reason why we selected onboarding, for example. We will always hire employees. Those employees will come with different experiences and perspectives. Technology will change. Our business will certainly change. So this really has forced us to go for those additional percentage points, if you will. But I think it's a yes, and again, an alternate perspective. But using the time, as you said, which is so correct, using the time and the effort and overall capacity to focus on other things where we can derive greater value, I think by all means is the name of the game. I just think it's a beautiful, as a leader, in reflecting on the day we introduced Agile up until now, to be able to see the strides we've made. One, you have to have a great memory, which is very powerful for a leader. But also, two, I think it allows you to continue to recognize the team's overall efforts. So you, instead of recognizing only because something was accomplished once, you're constantly recognizing the team because they're changing the operating system and the overall landscape on an incremental basis.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. And when HR people learn how to have these prioritization conversations, I think what the most important thing is here is that the decision is explicit. You just don't start working on something because it happens, or because somebody shouts at you, or because you get an email, but it is explicit decisions that are made, that these are the things that we're going to finish within the next quarter. Here is where we're going to put our effort, and why. This is why. This is going to be waiting, or this is not going to be done. And those are very explicit conversations. And then you're quite calm. It's okay not to touch those 10 things lying on the backlog, because you're focusing on the files that you agreed on. So it gives you, as you said, well-being, and that capacity, understanding where that balance is of working your hours and how much hours there are to actually work. So I think it's very important.
Riina, if you don't mind, I want to just give you the irony that dawned on us recently. So we we find I often find that when something is not, if we don't use Agile for a particular project, and let's take performance management, or perhaps something that's a lot more commonplace, like short-term incentive payouts, file feeds and data and everything else is transferred. It's usually not done in an Agile way. You usually follow some sort of project management methodology. Well, the likelihood that we will be on top of every issue is a lot less than perhaps if we had done, we'd embarked on those initiatives using Agile. Because in Agile, you're looking at so many different things. You know, you're looking at so many different elements. You're thinking about incremental scale and small adjustments. There's a lot more dialogue. You're involving the stakeholders. It's so much more robust than perhaps a project management approach. And that doesn't mean that everything is done in Agile or everything should be done in an Agile way. But I just think the benefits, the complete 360 of benefits that you get, the tapestry of benefits that you derive by way of Agile, in a lot of our cases, our observation, they far outweigh the traditional project management approaches.
I think these are conversations that are going on in many HR teams, because sometimes there is a misunderstanding of agility that, oh, it's just something you do without a plan and you can change direction whenever you want to, or it's just running faster, doing the same but running faster, or it is a project management methodology. And these are some of the kind of misunderstandings of agility, whereas Agile is, I tend to say that agility and Agile is a way of delivering value. It is a way, it's a practice and values and ways of working to get something done. And
Correct.
it's when you said agility isn't for everything, that's a great segue to our next theme as well, is where agility works, where you might not use agility for specifically, a lot of HR leaders are asking, oh, should we, the big consultancies are blasting out news that everybody are going into an agile operating model. And I go like, hold your horses, don't just change everything in HR to agile. That doesn't make any sense. You have to contextualize it. What are your thoughts around what, where agility works in what kind of contexts?
So I'll give you firstly where it doesn't. I don't believe that, and I'd love to be enlightened otherwise, but I don't believe that performance management necessarily should be confined to an Agile environment. Again, I'd love to be enlightened. I think where it has worked, and we saw this recently, and this was a long time to get here, and we added a mix of various different things. We have an operational side to HR, and of course we have a more strategic side. And that operational side, there's so many different transactions happening on a daily basis, some of which are good and some of which are not performing up to the task. And what we said was, let's get everything on a whiteboard, if you will, and we met as a team to really discuss openly as a full team, no hierarchy. Yes, I was facilitating a lot of the discussion, but we really wanted to discuss all of the processes, who was responsible for what, how well do we think it's performing, are we performing to the liking of our employees? And we found that over time, the team actually backdoored or in reverse entered into an Agile setup by not only documenting all of the processes and who was responsible, but also over time asking key questions like, could we do this any better? Who else should we involve? Is there a different way of us approaching this? And the team has now gotten into this HR operational cadence for the last 6 to 9 months or so. I'm happy to report that I'd challenged them. I said, we need a way to create a digital dashboard, even though we had a RACI matrix setup, this responsible, accountable, et cetera, matrix setup. I wanted to make it more operational and create a dashboard. And they iterated around that. And what they came up with was absolutely great. And I said to them, I said, stop here, gain feedback from the rest of the team. There were 2 individuals that I asked to lead this particular endeavor. Get feedback from the team. Use this for now. Keep working on it, and then just keep adapting it as time goes on. And it's worked very well. I mean, we went from roughly 12 to 15 processes in total, half of which I would say were either red or yellow in terms of overall performance and meeting our expectations, to now only 2 or 3 being in the red. We may have 1 or 2, I think, are in the yellow, but the vast majority now in the green. I've asked the team to constantly look at this. Let's not rest on our laurels and assume that it's all completed, but use this opportunity, use these operational meetings to constantly challenge whether or not we need to make incremental changes. And it's worked very well. Better understanding across the team of exactly who's working on what. I think a lot better connection across HR. And this is perhaps one of the underlying benefits that you don't typically see. We tend to work in silos because we're expert driven. But now the team really has a vast knowledge, a much more vast knowledge of what needs to be improved, and where each of them can add value.
Brilliant. What I'm hearing there is that, so this is often what happens with agile teams, because they're flat, everybody are working on the same plan, everything is transparent. They start understanding the complex dependencies between bits. And the second they realize there's a small change, everyone in the team understands or can talk about what does this change impact and how does it impact our plans? Because in HR, if we look at our processes, most of them have interdependencies. So looking at, for example, job change, we were working with a HRIS project where we needed to define job change as a process. And job change, we thought we were ready with it. So we had job change final description as a template then, as a document. We ended up with job change version 26 final, no, really final version 3, something like that. So we had like 28 iterations after we thought it was final, because the second we touched recruitment, the second we touched onboarding, there was a dependency towards job change as well. And when the teams are working around the same table with the same plan, and they get one of these changes, they're very quick on saying, oh, it affects these materials and this process and this connection and this this approval and whatever. So it's a really quick way of leading product development in a changing environment because of this transparency. There is a question, a lovely question in the chat. It's around expanding on the point about performance management. If you're okay, Lars, I could share a little bit of my experience with performance management.
Yeah, please. I'd love it.
So looking at a performance management structure in an organization, I wouldn't say you need agility to actually run it. There's the structure, there's the processes, there's the metrics, KPIs, objectives, the bonus systems, rewards. You can't really do it differently every quarter, right? You have that established system. But if you want to develop it, that's when you can do it in a more agile way. So, for example, I've been working with a couple of these projects where we're touching a big performance management structure. And sometimes we start with asking, how can we break that into releases? What could we update from that big structure and system that could be separately released? For example, the feedback part. We can start improving, we can take a quarter or a half a year and improve how we are giving and getting feedback, the upskilling of the people in that, the system, how it records feedback, etc. We can add peer feedback elements or team feedback elements into that. And just that part can be developed, tested, experimented with, having co-creation happen there. And then when we find out this would be a great way, this is a good solution for our organizations to do feedback, that's when we freeze it back into the process and say, here is now our way of doing feedback. We release that, we help the organization and its people start behaving that way. And then we can look at another part of that performance management structure. Maybe it's the rewards, maybe it's the going from an annual cycle of setting goals to an OKR model. So that can be done, I think, developing the performance management in a more agile way. What are your thoughts around that?
I 100% agree. I think I mean, this is why you're the expert, because that was the exact thought. I mean, it's so, I'd maybe add a bit more color from an organizational view. There's so much exposure during the performance management process. I mean, up, down. Every individual in the organization has some touch point, dare I say, some direct involvement in performance management, that you need to be very clinical in when you move into an agile or into an iterative setup, preferably before you kick off the cycle, or what is traditionally the cycle, end of year or beginning of the year. So I think you have to be very clinical and very careful because of the exposure. Unlike some of the other processes or initiatives that we've adapted to an agile environment, those things are more behind the scenes. Yes, of course, the experience for the employee is direct, but the inner workings of it is behind the scenes, and it's usually confined to a few individuals. So that's where I would say you have to be very delicate. But I 100% agree. In the redesign, in the development, I think there's an opportunity to actually go slow and be very steady, but be very clear in the questions as to what you would like to see that perhaps you don't see on a daily basis, to the leadership, that is, so that you're working on the right things. Because again, of all things outside of maybe payroll, it's performance management touches everyone.
True. So true. Excellent. From the operational side, HR operations, we sometimes, so with the development of processes, agility works really nicely. But once you've set up these processes, I would say you more need a lean approach to see continuous improvement of the ongoing process. You don't need a full agile team redesigning everything. So it becomes more a lean approach, and lean is very well known within the automotive industry as well. So I think that is almost ingrained in the way how people think. Is that a fair assumption?
It is, yeah. No, I would definitely say so. But I will tell you, there's always a temptation. I think we have to describe it as it really is. We are not wired for agile. In our DNA, agile is not in our DNA, as I love to tell my team. So I think you have to constantly check your temperament to make sure that you are fully prepared in a lean way to look at some of your processes. I can tell you now, I'd be tempted to leave onboarding alone because we've achieved a certain level of satisfaction amongst our employees. But therein lies the risk of going back to where we started when we first moved onboarding, when we first started with onboarding as an agile adoption.
There is a lot of, so now if I'm looking at the maturity of HR teams that I come across and start speaking with and having our customers, I would say about 20 to 25% of HR teams are actively looking into setting up a full agile operating model, at least for a significant part of their HR teams. Removing silos, starting to build a product-based and experience-based organization, looking into how to work with other functions as well, release planning, chunking things down into smaller parts. Then I can see a big portion, maybe another 25%, looking into using agility in projects, maybe in ring fencing agile projects and saying, in this project or this product, we're going to develop in an agile way. But then we have a big group of HR teams that haven't even started yet. There's a fantastic question about that. If you're an organization that embarks on the Agile HR journey, would you recommend starting with a single process or a product and respective SMEs, or would it be better to start with the Agile mindset and values across the whole HR department? There isn't a clear right answer, but what would you say if you would think about this approach, Lars?
Yeah, it's I'm so tempted to be philosophical, but let me just tell you practically what we did. Number one, I got certified. I think this is crucial. I think someone or a few individuals have to be certified. I think it sends a very clear message that you have a conviction about it. And I think in doing so, then you bring in not subject matter expertise, but you bring a learned approach to Agile and some of the methodologies. And that way you have very spirited debate, because that's exactly what will happen. Spirited debate as to what it should be, or what it is and what it isn't. Number one. Number two, I think it's important, based on our experience, to start with one thing. I was very tempted to say the entire HR team, but we started with one thing. And prior to that, we actually identified an Agile lead, someone that I needed to dedicate. I pulled that person out of their line function, and I 100% dedicated them. I didn't have the headcount. So one of the things I did, I said, who would adopt this idea right away? Well, I didn't think any more beyond who would adopt it, other than who would actually naturally gravitate to it. And that's where I got a group of interns. So I created a small team led by an Agile lead and a group of 4 interns, and they kicked off our first cycle of interns. We've now had 4 or 5 different cohorts of interns. We've now changed the title to junior associate consultants, because we believe that's what they actually do for us. They're not interns in the traditional sense. But having that dedicated team, I think sends a very clear message. They work in a, quote, scientific way. So a lot of what they do is 100% Agile. So I ensure that their projects, starting with that first one, and now several different projects, all of their projects are ring-fenced, as you said, Riina. But that's the practical approach to what it is. If I had to do it again, I would probably repeat it. I don't know if it's wise, now having hindsight on my side, if it's wise to go full with the entire HR organization. It's such a new thing. It's a mindset change. And as I said, very whimsically, this is not in our DNA. This is not taught. We're not taught to work this way. We have to learn this. And as adults, we know that learning is usually second to the task behind working. So I would be very careful, and I would likely repeat the same approach.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your view on that. I have to say, I see both ways. I see different ways of starting, depending on the context, depending on the goal, depending on the maturity and what you want to achieve. I have one global company that started with the mindset across everyone. And their view was, we're not even going to talk about Agile. We're just wanting people to start thinking about the customer, talking about validation, asking and co-creating with people. We want to start asking, what are we actually solving for? What's the problem that we're solving for? So they took this, let's not talk about Agile, let's start creating a culture. They started with that. And they were very successful, because when they first started with the mindset, then they had a few people join our kind of certified training who then started projects with them. But that was one way. I usually recommend the way that you said, is to have a few handful of ambassadors who really have the mandate and the expectation to, if you go to this training and get certified, we're expecting you to be able to lead projects, to kind of bring this into the organization with the help of then upskilling people with the mindset. So kind of have these first deeply upskilled people, and then do a bit of mindset according to what you start with. There is one kind of pitfall, is to train people and then nothing happens. I've seen things fail because of that. You invested in us, we learned this fantastic new way of thinking and working, but I can't use it anywhere. Why don't we have any projects where I can use it? So that's my one ask for anybody here who is thinking about this. Don't start upskilling people here if you don't move into action. So have something where you really have the mandate to work with Agile, give them the opportunity to get the support they need, and then have that as an experiment in your organization. And I really appreciate, Lars, as you said, people who start working this way in teams usually need somebody who's coaching them through the first cycles, because it's so new. They easily gravitate back towards the way they've been working before, to their silos, to working by email instead of having sessions where they coordinate live with live boards. So it's really easy to navigate back to the traditional way of working. So holding hands for a few rounds and they start getting the groove, then they can take a step back and see how that team starts doing it themselves. And my work here as a coach is done. They can run this by themselves. Now they get it, and they are usually shining. So it's really amazing. Yeah. We have a few minutes remaining. So when we start with agility, I'll give you an example. Payroll people sitting in a class and saying, we don't need Agile for anything. We've got our schedules. Every month we do the same things. We have our processes and we can't deviate from them. Why would we need Agile? And I say, I agree. For your everyday work, you don't need agility. And it's okay if you're have resistance towards agility for your own work, but don't have resistance because other people are starting to work this way. And it's best to understand how they work. So if there is a dependency, you understand how differently they work from you. What are your thoughts about this, that some people don't connect with agility at all?
Yeah, I I want to be fair because some of my best employees don't connect with agility. But I think as a leader, it's required of me, or it's incumbent of me, to have a certain level of conviction, and that's why I sought Agile out. I know it has a place. It absolutely has a place. When we rolled out the big test, was when we rolled out our business agility certification last year. We certified 3% of our organization, and that's not a big number. But what we're trying to get to is force multiplication, where we can find a relatively small cohort of individuals and then extrapolate their expertise across the organization over time. So again, incremental at scale sort of thing. So I do believe it's okay, frankly, because I think that is still valuable. And it's not about pitting one methodology against the other. I think it's trying to derive what's absolutely best for the customer. And I appreciate, frankly, that I have team members that have not adopted this new idea, but I've seen glimpses where they have, and they've spoken in an agile way without using the language necessarily. But I think I go back to what I mentioned about being inclusive. I think the idea and the thought around inclusivity should allow you to look at all types of working models, because in every instance there's one working model that will work the best and drive the most value, and sometimes it isn't always agile.
That's the point. I think if you're a true agilist, you're able to contextualize it. You're able to see, not just as a religion, I'm going to use everything, I'm going to be fully agile. Sometimes you need a blended approach as well. So it is really about understanding deeply what this is about, understanding the tools, practices, the values, the principles, and then picking up and taking what works to deliver that value. You're there to generate value. If agility doesn't work for that, don't use it. Or the other hand, if agile works really nicely for that, then it's a preferred approach, and it will help you deliver the value. As a kind of rounding up everything and kind of summarizing, what would you say? What would be your elevator speech for why would Agile HR? Why would Agile be recommended in HR?
I think there are two primary things. I think number one, I think there's really no better way that I've seen in the 20-odd, almost 30 years of working of a concept that can really rally an entire team. I think this has the power of rallying an entire team. Coupled with that, and this is the second part, no concept that has the uniqueness to rally the customer or to rally your stakeholders. And I think we're always looking for this silver bullet to give us just that. Great team engagement and great stakeholder involvement. And Agile has been exactly that for us.
Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. We have a few minutes. If there is a question, I will pick up one from the chat. Let me see. I would love to hear how the business has responded to this agile journey. What has been their response? Are you showing or telling the business that you're working a new way, or don't they know how you're delivering?
No, they do. They're quite aware. So we announced our business agility certification. We actually canvassed the entire organization and asked them explicitly for the individuals that they believe would have the mindset, because we didn't want to start from scratch necessarily. So they certainly know what we're doing. I would say we have some opportunities to actually expand this a bit more. But at the current moment, it is well documented, well known that HR has an agile lead and is very much involved in agile.
And are they happy to participate when you start validating, asking for feedback as well? Do they know why they are doing that? Because sometimes, like, why are you spending our time on your work?
Well, I'll tell you, if any of your audience members are HR folks, they know that we have a lot of closet HR people in every aspect of the business. So they're delighted to tell HR how it should be done.
Exactly. They've been trying to do that for 20 years, but now we're finally listening.
That's right.
Amazing.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Lars, for joining us.
Of course.
Highly appreciated. Love your storyline. I wish you all the best with your Agile journey going further, and hope that everybody here on the call appreciated that we got Lars to share their journey today. Have a fantastic day, everyone, and see you in our next meetups. Thank you so much, Lars, for being with us.
Bye-bye.